Welcome, everybody. My name is Stephanie LaBelle. I'm the Executive Director of Project Clean Slate. Today is a very special day, and we are so grateful to all of you for joining us. Mayor Duggan started Project Clean Slate in 2016 because he believed Detroiters deserve second chances. And since the inception of this program, thousands of Detroiters have been given those chances. However, none of the work that we do would be possible without our partners, funders, and supporters. A special thank you to our funders and supporters, including Bloomberg Associates, Hudson Weber, Bush Seaforth, Balmer Group, Senator Gary Peters and Senator Debbie Stabenow, the Community Foundation of Southeastern Michigan, the Bendit Family Fund, the Song Foundation, the Simon Foundation, and the Michigan Justice Fund. A huge thank you also goes to our partners, the Attorney General's Office, who have told me that we file 40% of all of the applications that are filed in the state, the Michigan State Police, courts and prosecutors across the state, and especially the Detroit Police Department. Every week, Project Clean Slate clients arrive at a police precinct to meet with our staff and attorneys and be fingerprinted by DPD free of charge. Many are anxious about the appointments because they've had a negative experience with the criminal justice system. Out of the thousands of clients who have come to us for an appointment at the precinct, we have never received one complaint about anybody. In fact, our clients tell us how respected they felt at their appointments, both by our team and DPD. So I cannot thank Chief White enough for setting that example and for his ongoing support of this program. Now, please help me welcome Mayor Mike Duggan.
All right. Well, let's give a big hand to Stephanie, who's been running this program. So, this really started when I was the prosecutor in 2002, and I ran into a guy at a community meeting who had been convicted of car theft 20 years before and couldn't get a job. And he told me his story, and I said, fine, have your lawyer file a motion for expungement. I'll make sure the prosecutor's office doesn't oppose it. And I sent him with my prosecutor. I ran into the guy a month later, and he said, I got a lawyer. The lawyer's going to charge me $5,000 to get the expungement. I said, how can that make any sense? And I dug into it, and the process was amazingly complicated. It said that you had to find the original sentencing judge, and the original sentencing judge had to concur. You had all this paperwork, records you had to file. Then you had to get the prosecutor on board. And so I actually set up a little division in the prosecutor's office that did the work for them, because these folks couldn't afford $5,000. But it was a small program. When I got to the city of Detroit, and you looked at what we needed to bring this city back, we needed everybody. We couldn't afford to leave thousands of people behind. People who had made a mistake, had served their time, and had been staying out of trouble. We needed them in the workforce. If we were going to get companies to come back, we needed their talent. I went to look at it, and 12 years later, the process wasn't any different than when I was the prosecutor. It was insane. And so we got Stephanie LaBelle to come in, and you had Carrie Jones to run the program. We had Butch Hallowell Corporation Counsel, followed by Lawrence Garcia, all trying to work this thing out. But the biggest problem still had to do with going back to the original judge. And if the judge retired, you have to find the judge's replacement judge who had the docket. You might have had 2 or 3 judges retire to figure this all out. And I went to Chief Judge Tim Kenney, and I said, this makes no sense. That the law says you have to go back to the court that sentenced you. It doesn't say you have to go back to the judge. What if your court were to designate a couple of judges who handled this docket? We could go to one courtroom, handle dozens of cases at a time, and do it efficiently. And Judge Kenney, to his credit, undid like 30 years of court bureaucracy and set up a special docket. Prosecutor Kim Worthy was tremendously supportive in consenting to these. The Bloomberg Associates and Rose Gill came in, and they helped us set up a process to make this happen, and we continued to refine it. And then a bipartisan group in the state legislature eased the restrictions to make more people eligible. Republicans and Democrats together unified on this issue. And when all those things came together, we kicked Project Clean Slate into high gear. There was no excuse for us not to handle large numbers. But I got to tell you, I never thought I'd see the day we had 10,000 convictions expunged just out of the city of Detroit. And that means, right? And I know you're going to hear the stories today, but the overwhelming majority of our residents who get expunged see significant increases in their employment, their personal income, and their quality of life. It makes a huge difference in the lives of people who before didn't really have anybody looking out for them. But I just said, you know what, we'll be your lawyer. We'll solve the court process, and we'll give you a hand up in the right direction. This is all made possible because part of it is the background checks, the police records, and the like. And we had a police chief who believed deeply in second chances and streamlined the processes within the Detroit Police Department and made all of this a lot easier. Please welcome our great police chief, James White.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Duggan. When you have a mayor that's a former prosecutor, processes like this are made very, very easy. This is a great day for our city. 10,000 expungements through a program like this is an example of just amazing work. Stephanie LeBeau, you should forever be commended for the work that you have done. This is a very passionate program for Ms. LeBeau, also a very passionate program for me. As the mayor indicated, everybody deserves a second chance, and no one has a chapter in their book that they prefer not be read out loud. And for people who get this opportunity, it is absolutely amazing. We talk about 10,000 people, but I want to tell you about one. I walked into the room, and Mr. John Golden is sitting here. Mr. Golden, would you wave? And he is just an amazing man, and I was surprised to see him. He says, Chief, I just want to say thank you again. And I won't get into the details, but his amazing wife, Tracy Golden, lost her life last year. And he is an amazing man, and he told me that he's gone through this program, and Ms. LeBeau was, in fact, his attorney, and that now he is a manager working and supervising young people. And that is a living example of what your work has done. My chief of staff, Michael Parrish, who's a commander and an attorney, pretty much every Wednesday is not available to me because he is volunteering his time appearing in court to help with this program. Michael, thank you for what you do. I will leave you with one of my favorite quotes, and it's from Dr. Benjamin May, former HBCU president and a civil rights pioneer, and he says that every man and every woman is born into this earth to do something unique and something distinctive. And if he or she doesn't do it, it shall not be done. And I will say to you, Ms. LeBeau, you have done something unique and something distinctive, helping people. Mike, you have done something unique and distinctive, helping people. Mr. Mayor, you continue to do it every day. So thank you for what you all are doing. Chief White introduces, I really messed this up. Council President Mary Sheffield, please forgive me.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. So, Project Clean Slate is a program that truly just touches my heart to hear the stories, and I see the gentleman here. The commercial was running on television. I'm sure you all have seen it. Here he is in person. Just that story in itself warms my heart. But we're really talking about a program that is about believing in the potential of our residents regardless of their past. It is about not allowing our mistakes to define us and really believing that there is opportunities past decisions that we have made. And as the chief mentioned, we've all made mistakes in life, and we should not be defined by those mistakes. I serve a God that is a forgiving God, a God of redemption, a God that is forgiving. And we all can embody that more Thank you, and the work that we do. And so I am just grateful for Project Clean Slate. I have had the privilege of hosting several expungements events, some with Project Clean Slate, and I can tell you to see the hope in the residents that come to these events. Their mind and their heart is in the right place. They want to be productive citizens and give back and contribute to society, but they have barriers to employment, to education that are preventing them from making and improving the quality of life for their families. And so this program is just instrumental in improving the quality of life for our residents. And then also the expungement process in itself is just not easy, especially if you do not have an attorney. And so to be able to navigate the various courts, the fingerprinting, for Project Clean Slate to be able to streamline that process and make it easier for our residents is really instrumental in their ability to make sure that they're able to clear their record and to improve their quality of life. And so Project Clean Slate really embodies our commitment to justice, to equity, and to fairness by dismantling barriers and empowering individuals to rebuild their lives. Behind each expunged conviction is a person, a son, a daughter, a neighbor who deserves a chance to move forward without the weight of past transgressions holding them back. We must recognize their courage, their resilience, and their determination to overcome adversity and rebuild their lives. By removing barriers to opportunity, we are strengthening our families, revitalizing our communities, and fostering economic prosperity. When individuals have the opportunity to secure stable employment, access to safe housing, and pursue higher education, we all benefit. We all benefit. So congratulations to the dedicated team, the dedicated attorneys behind Project Clean Slate, all of our community partners, our legislators, our judge, our courts, everyone that has made this program a success. Let me say as a council member, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree, we stand willing and ready to support further this program to touch 10,000 more lives through this Project Clean Slate program. So congratulations, and to all the lives that we have touched, I am so looking forward to what they contribute to the great city of Detroit. Thank you so much. And now we're going to bring up both of my colleagues, Councilmember Waters and Councilmember Durhal.
So, good afternoon to everyone. Councilmember Fred Durhal, and it is just a tremendous day to be here to celebrate 10,000 expungements. First, I want to thank the mayor for his leadership, but as well as Ms. Stephanie LeBeau and the whole Project Clean Slate staff have had the opportunity to do expungement fairs, and they are top-notch, not only because they are skillful at what they do, but they are really passionate. They really care, and you can see that in the work that they do and the conversations they have. On the way here, I was thinking about just some things that I wanted to say, and one of the things that I decided to do was actually call someone that I know personally who has been through Project Clean Slate to just get that feel again in those conversations, which are so important, get that deep into my mind as I speak. I think about when I served in the state legislature. I introduced the Ban the Box bill, which removes the question, have you been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor, from a job application. So you can imagine, I was happy to see when the city of Detroit was one of the first cities and municipalities to do that here in our region. But there were still barriers that existed. And the barriers that existed were somewhat like a scarlet letter, meaning that you have done everything you can to make your life more productive. You have paid your quote-unquote debt to society, and now you're back in the community. You're trying to do amazing things, but folks still attach your mistake to you. It has never missed upon me that everybody sitting in this room is one mistake away from that same type of situation, one bad decision from that same type of situation. But the thing that defines us is not the actual mistakes or the bad decisions we make, but how we recover from those mistakes and bad decisions and choose to move forward with them. And so I am happy to be here today because I remember having those conversations as I had on the way here, even walking through our 36 correctional facilities here in the state of Michigan, and folks who were getting ready to meet their earliest release date, wondering where they would go. Wonder what their future would look like, But a project like this, a program like this, not only gives them hope, but helps them lay the path so they can move forward to the productive future that they want. And with that, someone who has been advocating for, whether you want to say returning citizens or justice involved folks here in the state of Michigan from her time in the legislature, my great colleague, Councilmember Mary Waters.
Thank you so much, Member Durhal. I recently heard a pastor, his sermon, he said, "My scars does not define who I am." And that's how I see this. So, Mr. Mayor and Project Clean Slate, I want to say thank you. Thank you so very much for all of your hard work. So Project Clean Slate is a powerful program, powerful, proud people. It's not easy to be convicted of a crime. We are told that everyone is guilty until proven innocent. That's what happens. And that once you serve your time, you are free, but until recently, that wasn't so. The stigma of a conviction will follow you for the rest of your life. No matter how far you've turned your life around, that stigma still hampers you. It prevents access to housing. There's so many people now who call our office who cannot get housing because of such a thick stigma. Education, that's another one. And let's not forget about employment opportunities. These are stigmas that hurt people day after day. So I am so very grateful to the state legislators for all of their hard work, but let me just brag about myself just a little bit. During my time in the state legislature, I was proud to sponsor early expungement legislation, House Bill 4327. And yes. Because you see, during that time, I recognized how important it was. As I traveled throughout my district during that time, Sherry gave that no-go. Yes. People were saying to me, young men were saying to me, "Ms. Waters, I need to get a job. I need some employment, but I have a record. I've turned my life around, but I have a record, and I cannot get a job." And I said, you know what? I'm going to try and do something about it. But as many of you know, by the time, at that time, because you only had 6 years and you were term limited, by the time that I got House Bill 4327 where it needed to be, it was time to go. It was time to go. But lo and behold, another state legislator took up that matter and decided to move forward, at least for the initial piece of legislation. So I just want to say once again, thank you all so much. And I felt like I was working with you all along when you were moving that legislation through. I said, yes, Mary, you laid that foundation, and I'm so grateful for that. Thank you all so very much.
Now, if you could please help me welcome State Representative Graham Filler, also former chair of the House Judiciary Committee.
This is a great day. All right, State Rep Graham Filler, 93rd District, it's the middle of your hand. I was the Judiciary Chair in 2019, and I knew about expungement. I'm an attorney, and I knew how limited it was and that no one was accessing it. And so I met with the mayor, and he said, you've got to come down to Detroit and Wayne County, and you've got to sit with the people. So I went to a job fair on the west side, and I met with a woman, and she said, listen, I want to start a small business, but I have a use and possession cannabis charge from 12 years ago and a driving with a suspended license, and I can't access it anymore. And it was a really powerful conversation because she was just killing it, and she wanted to earn more money, and she wanted to take care of her kids. And I said, that's what we're going to do. And so I came upon this thought. The government asks you to pay taxes, support your family, and do the right thing, but then you make a mistake, And all of a sudden, the system says, well, that mistake's going to follow you and stop you from doing what this government asked you to do. So in 2019, I firmly started believing in expungement and the power. I took 3 Democrat bills, I believe one of your bills, and I took 3 Republican bills, and I put them together, and I quarterbacked nation-leading expungement through the state house and turned it into law. Thank you. The state of Michigan now has the most access to expungement in America, and Project Clean Slate was doing great before it, and now their rockets are refueled, and they're doing hundreds and hundreds, up to thousands, as we see on the wall, of expungements. Expungement is a lifeline. Expungement is a fairness proposition. It's a great thing for public safety. Expungement helps people make more money for themselves and for their family. It helps people build small businesses. And I will say personally, Michigan's expungement reforms will probably go down as the legislative accomplishment I'm most proud of bringing, thank you, bringing Republicans and Democrats together to make our state more prosperous, more fair, and more free. And now I want to introduce former Representative Sherry Gay Dagnago, who supported and stood with me at the initial expungement press conference in a field by Stellantis, and she helped this legislative package become law. Thank you, Sherry Gay.
Good afternoon. This is extremely exciting. I just have to first say thank you, Mayor Duggan, and thank you, Stephanie LeBeau, for inviting me to be a part of today's celebration. Everybody was wondering, like, how does Detroit do better than what we did during the NFL draft? And Mr. Mayor, I have to say, you got to take a bow for that, and you got to take a bow for Clean Slate. 10,000? 10,000? And I have to say that it's not just 10,000. It may be 10,000 expungement and applicants, but we know that every citizen that has had an expungement has family. They're a daughter, they're a son, they're a husband, they're a wife, they're a parent. And many of those parents now that I serve at the Detroit School Board, many of those parents couldn't even go on their children's field trip for low-level offenses. And we've removed that barrier to now have more parent participation. Rep. Filler, it's always great to be back. People often don't hear the stories of how a Republican and a Democrat really do work together. We walked across the aisles, we talked, we had conversations, we maybe had tea occasionally to talk about these great ideas, but that's how it's done. Building the necessary trust, partnership, friendship, whatever it is, allyship, to affect lives, because U of M did a study that talked about 2 to 3 million Michigan citizens. It's not just Detroit. 2 to 3 Michigan citizens having offenses on their records that are now being removed. And so 10,000 is what we adjudicated for the city of Detroit, but we have close to 1 million that have come off automatically through the state's process. This is huge to celebrate, and I'm thankful to celebrate second chances. I'm born on Burlingame and Dexter, raised in a single home, someone whose father was once incarcerated. And so to come from the classroom, being a teacher, to go to the legislature and fight for citizens who are looking simply for a chance to start their lives over again. On one end, I fight for education because I know that prisons are built based on third-grade reading scores, and so that's one pillar of my leadership. But I also fight like hell for those citizens who need a second chance, who want to go on the field trip with their children, who need housing, who need jobs, and who better to do that than someone who's been impacted when my father was incarcerated, and I'm not ashamed to tell that story. Public Act, thank you. My bill, Public Act 188, One Bad Night. We know that many of us, like Graham Filler has said and Councilman Durhal has said, that we're all just one decision away from making a bad decision that can give us one bad day or one bad night. I'm very thankful to have that bill etched in our state's legislative policies to change the lives of many of our citizens who dare fight for a second chance. I'm glad to see my friend here, Darrell Woods, who is an example of someone who has totally transformed his life. I could go through the room and name countless people, but I have to say before I introduce this champion judge, I have to thank and remember my late colleague, Rep. Isaac Robinson, who also fought very hard for criminal justice reform. I have to also thank Senator Sarah Anthony, who who is the leader of appropriations in our legislature for the first time, a black woman, who made sure that she invested in priorities to expungement in the city of Detroit, and Rep. Jimmy Wilson. Please give them applause. Stephanie may not toot her own horn, but Project Clean Slate was working even during COVID to make sure that even through virtual meetings and conversations, we were working with a number of organizations like Legal Aid and Defenders Association, Black Women Lawyers, the Delta Sigma Thetas, who hosted a number of these. And so thank you for even putting up with me and my countless emails asking to host these events. The first one we hosted was in Isaac's memory, so thank you so much. The last thing I'll say is there are two judges that I was reaching out to when I was trying to make sure that my bill stayed a part of this package. It's not finished until it's finished, and then it's not finished until the governor signs it. And so I was reaching out to make sure that there was no opposition. And so while she is not here, I have to salute Judge Deborah Thomas, who has been a champion for expungement reform for years. And Judge Kenny, you are indeed the man, the man, the man. Put your hands together for Judge Kenny, who helped to champion this fight and made sure it became a reality. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you so much.
I should have her speak at my funeral. Mr. Mayor, and to Stephanie in particular, let me say that I think it is meaningful that we're celebrating this particular event in the spring, because the spring represents a time of renewal.
Yes.
It represents a time of new growth. And for virtually everybody, especially who has to live through a Michigan winter, it's a sign of a time of optimism and a time of hope. I was fortunate enough to be invited to be a participant and hopefully a resource when Mayor Duggan decided that he needed to expand and really accelerate how we do these expungements. And earlier this afternoon, I had the chance to talk to Butch Hollowell because he and I were at the first one that we had. It was at the Fellowship Chapel, and it was on a cold Saturday morning. And none of us knew how many people were going to show up. As the mayor indicated, the old statutory framework was very Byzantine. I mean, the only thing that was missing was that you had to know the secret handshake in order to get the expungement. And so we didn't have any idea how many people were going to show up. So I decided, well, I'll get there like a half hour early and help with whatever arrangements are needed to maybe get things ready for when the doors open. And when I got there a half an hour beforehand on this cold Saturday morning in January, the line was around the building. So when the city of Detroit and the mayor said, we really need to accelerate handling this expungement process, it was not a hard sell. There were plenty of people who were deserving and who needed this. And as was stated, this number that we see on the wall, the 10,000, not only are these 10,000 lives that have been improved, but there are families that have been improved. And people, not only the individual who got the expungement, but members of their family who maybe now have a little bit more reason to hope for their future, that things will improve. And just as a quick aside, I had the opportunity to meet and actually am continuing to have some dealings with someone who was a beneficiary under the Project Clean Slate program. About a month and a half ago, Stephanie LaBelle got a well-deserved award from the Federal Bar Association. I was invited to the luncheon, and I was invited to sit at her table. And when it came time for everybody to finish their earlier conversation and sit down so the meeting could begin, I went and I saw that there was just one seat left at the table, and I sat down next to someone, and being polite, you just turn and say, hi, I'm Tim Kenny, and who are you? And the response that came back was, I know exactly who you are. And as it turns out, I was the prosecutor on that individual's case. And he is out. He is involved in helping returning citizens. I retired at the end of 2022. I am now on the board of a project dealing with returning citizens and those who have been released from the Wayne County Jail. And so we've had an opportunity to talk and connect to try to build some bridges, how we can help one another through our operations. So Operation Clean Slate can touch many, many lives in ways, some unforeseen. But let me just close by saying this. I think that sometimes it's helpful to think about some images when we leave an event like this. And since it is the spring, I think we often find that we get up, and if you've got to go to work early in the morning on a spring day, we know in the springtime it can be a very heavy, dense fog. And having to drive through that can be very frightening. It can be discouraging. And you can think maybe it's going to take me forever to get where I need to go. But what happens as the day goes on, the sun comes out, and the sun burns off that fog, and the road ahead becomes clearer, and everyone can see what lies ahead. Project Clean Slate, I think, is that strong, warm beam of sunlight that ends that fog so that returning citizens who are eligible are able to see a brighter and a clear path ahead. All the stakeholders here who have participated have joined together, and it all goes to show that in this time of discord, that if people focus on solving the problem, we can get things fixed. So my congratulations to the city and to Project Clean Slate.
Thank you, Judge Kenny. Now we would like you to hear from two PCS clients. Our first speaker is Ms. Kenyatta Stovall.
Hi, my name is Kenyatta Stovall. I'm one of 10,000.
All right.
I'm forever grateful because I was affected because of my blemishes on my record. Project Clean Slate helped me to get back into the medical field. I've been back in the hospital since December, and I am forever grateful. I want to say thank you, Mike Duggan. I watched the interview, the conference you had in January when you first announced of the expungement, and I'm like, oh, I'm about to do that real quick. Because I was one trying to get a lawyer to help me to do clear my record, but it was too costly for me at the time. But I am forever blessed, and I appreciate everyone who has partaken in the Project Clean Slate.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Mr. Nicholas DuBose.
How y'all doing? Good, good. And so, man, what a time to be in Detroit. Yeah. And so I want to share my experience with Project Clean Slate post-expungement, right? There's a lot of major benefits to having your record expunged. Councilman Waters mentioned earlier, education is a big piece, housing is a big piece, not education, but employment, that might be number one. But alongside those very big issues, you have these smaller but just as significant things that happens, and you don't know these things until they happen. And so I'm gonna talk just briefly about those things. So I did talk publicly about this before, but for example, I had a felony on my record, and somehow or another, I promised my kids I would take them to Canada. Well, we all know there's no Canada if you got a felony, right? Right, so that's like one of those little things. Now it's these major items plus travel, right? Or I've also talked about this, my wife and I, we became foster parents for our nephew in his time of need. Well, DHS, they vet you for that. They do a background check. And even if you have the ability to help, if you have a felony, you can't help, right? So now you're looking these major items plus travel plus foster. And you even mentioned the school bus thing. But that's another one of those kind of residual things. My wife actually, speaking of the state of Michigan, she's actually onboarding for a position for the state of Michigan. And she had to do a background check, but guess who else had to do one? I did. Sidebar, just for a second, because it just popped in my head. Could you imagine what the conversation at the dinner table, let's say, that I would have with my wife if my mess up from 20 years ago, right, mess up her job that she just got out of college for? That's a tough conversation to have. But thanks to the city of Detroit, our leadership, Mayor Duggan, the Project Clean Slate initiative, all of the role players, I don't have to have that conversation, right? It's these little things that happens kind of all over the place. I got one more for you. Recently, I switched careers. And in the interview process, they did the normal stuff. They say, hey, we're gonna do a drug test, we're gonna do a physical, and we're gonna do a background check. You can just about imagine my confidence when they said background check. I was just like, all right, cool, right? But if we look past the newfound confidence, if we look past that for a second, there was a point when they decided that they wanted to hire me. And they slid an offer across the table. For the first time in 30 years, I've been working almost 30 years. First time in my whole life, I negotiated my salary. That was a really, really big deal. Yeah. I felt like I could do that because I felt worthy. I felt worthy. And that was because I walked in without that cloud over my head, right? I'm thankful. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nick. Now you guys see why Nick is the last speaker. But before we conclude the speaking portion of the celebration, I need to acknowledge the Project Clean Slate team. One of the most amazing parts of today is that our team consists of 13 people. So these 13 women and men come to work every day, guiding Detroiters through the expungement process with compassion and respect. They embody our core values of quality customer service, effective communication, positivity, and teamwork, and I'm proud to lead such a dedicated group. Would the PCS team please stand, wave your hands, and be recognized? And finally, I'd like to thank Mayor Duggan's Deputy Chief of Staff, Carrie Jones-Grace. Without her, none of this would be possible. And thank you to all of our speakers and guests for attending. Please enjoy the celebration.